Jamesi here, psych nurse practitioner, where on this internet street I make it okay to not be okay. Today we're jumping right in. We're gonna talk all things family enmeshment. Do you know that your family? Do you know what, like, when you say family of enmeshment, what it means? Sometimes we can become codependent on our original family, emotionally especially, because we are so connected with them from childhood and on. So family enmeshment comes to play when you step out of your family of origin, your mom, your dad, your siblings. And siblinghood can be different whether if you were in a blended family, so to speak. So you're connected with them emotionally to some degree. There's some trauma bonding that went on. There's some codependency that could be there. I'm 43, going to 23. And this is right now coming to light to me, how that kind of enmeshment can affect us. And I'm healing and working on different ways of setting boundaries with family of origin. And especially when you're becoming stronger, you're healing from the family that you were born from, looking from outside in, especially when you're married, and how, let's say your parents, your influence from your parents, your dependency on, maybe a mom or a dad or a sibling, especially when stuff going on, to you, especially in my community of color, to utilize those avenues to maybe resolve issues or seek perspective instead of maybe looking at a neutral party, like a therapist, a pastor, a really respectful member of the community for that. But that enmeshment can really, because you're still like that bonded to them, and they also kind of echo looking out for you, your interests. It can really become a really codependent thing where sometimes you might feel like you cannot really flow in different ways because of fear of judgment from your original family, sibling, a parent, mom or dad. You're dependent on them for their opinion in order for you to do something. So sometimes it's good to have that support. Family bond is necessary. Some of us might find even bonding besides our family of origin in friendship and people we meet outside of that, especially once you step outside family, you're grown up, you're getting married, you have your own family to raise. It can become very mishmash. It can become very nuanced. Because growing up, maybe you're dependent on your parents. You were dependent, and then as you grow up, you probably haven't severed that connection yet. So you might say, "Hey, Dad," or "Hey, Mom, what do you think? What do you think of this course?" Let's say you're going to the university, you're going to college. "Hey, what do you think? Is this course good for me or that and the other?" They might coach you or guide you, advise you. Or in some families, depending on how your family of origin looks like, if they're punitive, right? If they use autocratic way to manage the household, especially fathers, especially when you talk about the patriarchy, that style. And I've had friends, I've had this story where this friend of mine, most of the family members are doctors, so she was expected to go into medicine. But that's not what she wanted to do. She wanted to do something more mainstream. So she felt a level of pressure. Her dad wanted her to be a doctor. Her brothers were doctors. But are they happy being doctors? A lot of times maybe not, but they're doing it because that's what is expected of them from the family lineage. So this is a commitment enmeshed. Even picking a partner, if you pick a partner who maybe is not a doctor, a partner who is not highly educated, but they're kind, they're loving, they're this and that. Let's say you pick a partner who works like normal, everyday, blue collar. If it's blue collar, the right. Let's say they work in a grocery shop, or they drive a bus for a living, things like that. If you see what I'm talking about, and you're coming from a family where all the family members are doctors, and you bring home perspective, right? Like, hats off to those professions that I'm talking about. Necessary, I can mention many other. Like, let's say you bring home a partner who's, doesn't work in fields that maybe your parents will approve of. So now you're gonna seek the approval so bad, and if you don't get it, that can limit your decision making. So you weigh. One of the main things I'm going to talk about family enmeshment, that enmeshment mentality, and how that can affect how we show up in our present life, is that it can delay you making decisions. Like I was saying, the course in college, career, who you marry, how you raise your kids even. I remember a story one time, I told it many times, when my mom came to help me when I had my second child, and I really had to go back to work right away after 8 weeks. Because, hey, that's how you don't get more than 8 weeks when I was C-section, 6 weeks for natural birth. So having experienced my mom in that way, I love my mom to pieces, but the way she raised us is not the same way that I've chosen to raise my children. I'm raising my kids from an enlightened point of view, where I would rather have that collaborative. I will have a collaboration with my kids, where I'm talking to them, I'm teaching them skills, letting them know, do it this way or that way. Have you considered this way? I'm teaching them to voice their opinion. What do you think? So what do you think? What do you want to do? What would you do in that scenario? So bringing them to thinking more about things rather than just being dictatorship. We're telling them. So she was with me for about a year, and I recognized in that moment, as I've grown, 43 years old, she will be, I would call it, critical of how I parent. She'd be like, back home from where I come from, it was the lashing. Children are seen and not heard. All those traumatizing. You become a person growing up where you don't think your voice mattered, because your parents never really made you feel like your voice mattered. Majority of people who grew up where I grew up, that's how it is. There are a few parents at this age group now, when I was growing up, were more of that kind of dynamic, where they're interactive with their parents, more enlightened parenting, soft parenting, or whatever we want to call it. I know there's a wording for that right now. I'm throwing blank. I don't want to divert from what I'm talking about. But she was critical. She's like, hey, you don't beat them. You need to beat them. She's being naughty. She's not listening to you. She's disobeying you. You need to, you don't beat them enough. If you beat them enough, they wouldn't be doing this and that. And I find myself being very defensive, getting stressed out, even to some point sometimes where I feel like I have to be protective of my kids. So it's just like a year, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather have my kids maybe be in daycare, or, this and that, manage it differently than solely depend on my mom, because her mentality is so different from my mentality when it comes to how to raise my kiddos. And I find myself having to kind of bat heads with her in that way. And as much as I love my mom, it was becoming a point of contention for me, because I just decided, that's why I kind of left home, because I just didn't like that instability, that chaos, that yelling and screaming. That's maybe even another reason why I became a single mom. That's why I became divorced, because both my trauma from my childhood and my partner's parents and in-laws and their similar approach to raising family, even approach to being a woman, that enmeshment of mentality about children, about womanhood, about career choices, about your choices to be who you are, and unapologetically being you, funny, just easygoing, just kind of like just being okay, fine, just fine. But I'm just saying that enmeshment can leave you stuck with people because you are so codependent. So in that scenario in the past, I would have been doing things to make sure my mom is all right. So when she's all right, then I'm all right. I'm going to seek her approval, trying to convince her as to how good or great it is for me to raise my kids the way I do. Yeah, I used to do that a lot. And she won't understand. She'll just be like, no, you just gotta beat them, and that's the way you do it. And I'm like, no, this is my home, and I don't do it that way. And I'll come back from work already burnt out from work all day, managing my calendar with my kids' activities, managing my own activities. And I had a grown-up child at that time too. So I had 2 kids, but I have 3 kids. But kind of like that. But that's another mentality that when we get married from enmeshment, we'll treat our partners like they are our first children. You pick up after them, wash for them, cook for them. You become a servant for everyone around you. Your parents, your kids, your in-laws. They can pop up in your house anytime they want. No boundaries. You're not allowed to have boundaries because from the family of enmeshment, their mentality is so different. So far, they're not aware. And if you allow that to be an ongoing thing, you're going to just burn yourself. You're going to constantly be cut down at your knees, or you're going to feel like you're constantly have to pick yourself up from ground zero up. So these are some of huge impact of family, of origin, enmeshment, especially when it comes to marriage. When it comes to blending it all together, your family, their family, how they grew up, how you grew up, culturally, and if you're a Christian too, that on top of it, spiritual abuse is a real thing. Where they're quoting the Bible all over the place. You're not humble. You're not you don't have humility. So you become so delayed. You can't even think beyond those points to even to do creative things for yourself, or pick careers for you that will make you happy because don't have your approval, or you can't get approval from them the way you wish they would support you and say, oh, I love you anyway. If that's what you want to do, that's what you're passionate about, then go ahead. Do you feel that way? Do you feel what I'm saying? Do you identify with the fact that you have to twist yourself? You might have to wait to get approval. You feel guilty a lot if you make certain boundaries. I talked about boundaries, how sometimes you have to do modified boundaries when it comes to your parents, especially when you are enmeshed in being a sandwich generation. You really have to work on setting boundaries with your parents, setting boundaries with your in-laws. You can't have a life. It almost feels like when you have a life outside of your enmeshed family, sometimes they even, semblance of maybe even like certain feelings that I'll hesitate to mention or put an umbrella term on. So there's like guilt or shaming or question. I'm like, oh God, you're becoming too much. Oh my God, what is going on with you? So you're enmeshed, but then if you're not in that healing or healed space, it can leave you feeling stuck, guilty, almost feeling like a sense of toxic responsibility and anxiety. Toxic responsibility and anxiety because your mental state has become used to that. Your self-esteem is not solid enough for you to be able to do things and set those boundaries without that the real estate you're putting them in your mind to please them by any means necessary, because you can live with the anxiety of not doing so, of doing you. Does your life constantly revolve around around them. You have to consider them. You have to consider those members of the family for every decision you make. Let's say you make a decision to move out to California. Are they going to judge you and say, oh my God, why are you moving to California? You're setting the boundary that they cannot come to your house after a certain time of, they have to give you notice before they show up at your house. If they come to your house on vacation, maybe they can only stay for a week or two. If they come to vacation, which I love so much, they can stay in your house. You can nicely accommodate them in a hotel so you can still have your space. Just because you have family doesn't make it where you have to be in my space and make me all like, oh, I still have my life that's still gonna go on. I love you, but these are the boundaries so we can all flow good. So I can keep that demureness going. You respect myself, I respect you. I'll send you an Uber, a nice one, like the big size one, the cars. And we can have lunch and dinner together. We can chat. And then you can go to your hotel. I go to my home and we see each other in the morning, okay? That's how I do it for myself too. Because sometimes we come to expect that the way we will treat other people, we expect them to treat us the same way. But people I know, I come to learn that the hard way. That people, including our family members, might not necessarily treat us the way we will treat them. Because of codependency, you have that expectation in your mind, but it's not the same. There's some people who are just anti-empathy. They just don't have the bandwidth. They just don't have the maturity to think at the level that you think of. Not that you're way far ahead of them, but they just haven't done the work or not willing to do the work to do that. And it's okay for you to make those choices and say, this is the way I'm gonna do it. Take it or leave it. But I'll still love you though. But this is how you being okay with it without feeling overly guilty. Because at the end of the day, you know what? That person, those people, those family members, those friends, whatever. I won't even say friends. I'm focusing on this family for enmeshment. They're going to do what they're going to do anyway. This life is short, right? You have to do things that make you feel okay. So your reason for being here is fulfilled. Just because you're married doesn't mean it's okay for all of those parts to come and just kind of fall on your head. Especially as a woman, when you're married, all of a sudden, maybe your mom is living with you. Maybe your in-law comes to visit at the same time. Now you have both mothers in your house. And you just are overwhelmed and you have like kiddos running around, you're chasing, you're still expected to work full-time or sometimes even more jobs and come home and still carry the duties of the home, because when your partner comes home, the expectation of having the meal ready, prepped ready, and sometimes due to respect, cultural respect, those in-laws sometimes are barely doing anything. They're sitting expecting you to actually cook and conserve them while they sit pretty. Are you in that situation? And how is that serving you? It might be time for you to maybe consider things, look for a third party, have some conversations with them. Because when you're leaving it up to your partner, sometimes your partner just doesn't have the courage to have those conversations. And this is your space, so you might have to be willing to have those tough conversations. You might have to be okay with setting those boundaries, going no contact for a little bit, and then changing into modified no contact. So setting boundaries to say you can come to my house, but maybe after 10, you can call me, but not on the weekends. Because I gotta rest. Even God's rested on the 7th day. Maybe you might say on the weekends, I can only talk to you, but I'm only available from this time to that time. And it's okay. If people can't deal with those things when they are at work, they should be able to respect your boundaries. And if they don't respect it, it's up to you to take yourself and remove yourself, if so be it. Because boundaries are for you, not for them. Because you can pray and love them and you can't pray and love people out of toxicity or out of their mindset or out of the way they choose to think, including your enmeshed family, your siblings, your parents, and so on. So until then, maybe you have some work to do. Maybe you have some reflection to do. If you can love yourself, If you can whip it in your mind, you can whip it everywhere else in your life, including your family, your enmeshed family, and your family of origin. It's work in progress. But hit me up if you need some more support, some more conversations around that.